Thank you. Terima kasih Mas Sena. Selamat pagi. Good morning. How are you all? Is it your second day or third day? Third day. It's like not a very good day, eh? Usually the first day is very exciting, and the last day is very exciting too. In the middle is about, you lost your energy and everything. Borders. We are going to talk about borders here. This is my third or fourth time probably in this same occasion. I always feel the same energy, very exciting audience also. When you talk about borders, is there anything come up into your mind? Like, can you tell me one word or two if you hear about borders? What? Separating. Thank you. Very good one. Any other word? Outline. Very good also. Anyone from this side? Yes, please. Territory. Very good. Anything else? Boundaries. Any more? Very good one. Anything more depressing than that? Or better than that? From this side? You talk about borders, what are you thinking? Yes, please. Cooperation. Sorry? Operation. All right. Well, I was expecting something positive, but you say actually something very, very negative. Yeah? Thank you. Which is very good. Yes, please. Delimitation. Are you from somewhere because your term is very sophisticated. That is 3 credits in my department. You know that. Thank you. Very good one. Anyone? Okay, borders. We talk about borders probably. I always do this when I started my lecture. I ask people what you think about when you heard about borders. These are usually what came up. Right? Quite similar to what you said, right? Now, if you talk about borders, is there any physical object that you think about? Walls. In general, we understand that. How about this? Anyone? Do you know what this is? This is a Berlin Wall, right? Berlin Wall, but your generation probably do not really understand it as much as we did, because I'm old, apparently. Berlin Wall was one of the probably most obvious borders between countries until 1989. So the Berlin Wall fell down in 1989. But now, almost 20 years after is it 20 or 30? Can you count? Close to 30, right? Close to 30 years after the Berlin Wall fell, we still have problems with borders, correct? When the Berlin Wall fell, the Kenichi Omai coined a term called "now we live in a borderless world." But apparently, somehow it is true, but on the other hand, it is not so correct because we still have problems with borders. Now, anyone has been to North Korea here? Or anybody from North Korea? Oh, you have been to North Korea? No? I know that some of you are K-popers here, but are you a K-popers? No. Are you EXO-L or ARMY? I'm one, because I love twice. If you don't understand my joke, please ask your friend. I have been to North Korea, to Pyongyang. So I was there in 1999 when I was your age. So I visited the border area between North Korea and South Korea, not from the southern part, but from the northern part. I went to this over here in the border area from how should I do this? Okay, good. From the northern side. Now from the map, what do you think about this map? Is there any impression that you got from the map? Anything? Yep. North Korea does not display any cities in the map. Which means, what does it mean? Is there, like, there's nothing in North Korea, right? Or they keep things private, but whose map is it? It's Google Maps. So what does it mean actually? The world does not understand about North Korea, right? Is it correct? We don't understand about North Korea. How can we judge if you don't understand? So I went to the Panmunjom, the borderline, which is over there, and this is what we can see there. Building exactly in the borderline. So the building is actually divided by the line over there. It is borderline between North Korea and South Korea. So the building actually belongs to two countries. What about the certificate? Or the tax? Maybe you economics people, you'll think, hey, how about the tax of the building? So those are actually, the dotted line actually representing the borderline. So inside the building there are tables, maybe that kind of table, that size of table. In the middle of the table there are microphones. You know, I'm talking about the 1999. It was like 20 years ago. The microphone and also the cable. There's no wireless microphone as yet. And the cable actually represents the borderline. So North Korea, South Korea. So in the building, they did all the negotiation and all the meetings. Outside, we can see this. This is from the northern side. Can you see that line over there? That is actually the line, the borderline. What should I do to make it up? Okay, right. We can also see this. South Korean, North Korean. Okay, so this is what we can do. What can see? I have been to a place where border is guarded 24/7, very strict. But what happened now? A few days ago, first time in history after like many decades, the leaders of the two countries meet exactly on the building that I just mentioned. When I was there, Kim Jong-un was still a baby. And he is a president at the moment already, so his career is a lot more better than mine, I think. So this is what happened now. The world is changing. What we think that, like the Berlin Wall even, nobody thought about that Berlin Wall would fall one day in the 60s or 70s, but in 1989, we saw history. We also witnessed history here. That for the first time in decades, the two leaders from South Korea and North Korea meet exactly on the very historic place in the borderline. What else? Nobody would think about this 10 years ago. That the two leaders, well, please ignore the mohon maaf lahir dan batin, but I think they really have to say that to each other, right? And that is the other side of the world. Now the other side of the world. I was in Monaco in 2010, invited to give a talk in Monaco. Have you been to Monaco, anyone? Okay, is there anything that you think about when you heard about Monaco? Yeah, Formula 1, right? F1, I know. I was giving a talk, and on the first day I was given pizza for my meals. Of course, Indonesians love pizza. On the first day, it was all right, and then the second day, they gave me pizza again. On the third day, another pizza. And my Indonesian stomach could not really stand, so I asked the organizer, where can I find the best meal in the world? Rice. And the organizer informed me there is an Asian restaurant over there, which is over there, and this is my position, where the conference was. And then I checked in my Google Maps, it was only 7 minutes by walk. It's very close actually. And then I went there for dinner. Nothing happened, it was very nice. I had dinner. I couldn't really feel anything until the next day I realized it was actually in different countries already. So walking 7 minutes will move you from one country to the other country without even you noticing it. So that is another impression of me for borders. That changed my imagination about borders, because I have been to North Korea. Now when you are in Europe, I think if you're from Europe, I think you understand what I mean. It's a completely different setting of the world. Okay? If you're from around here, if you're an Indonesian, you would understand what I am talking about. This is South China Sea. Okay, one day in 2016, there were fishing vessel from China came to here to fish. Not one, two, not two, three, or even more, four. And because Indonesian officials were sure that they're actually fishing within Indonesian water, of course, our official captured them, right? Like this. Okay, ignore the... She's actually our minister, if you don't understand. I know that Ibu Susi will not be here, so I show her picture. So. And then a few minutes after that, there was a bigger vessel came to protect those four vessels and asked our Indonesian official to release them. Okay, what happened here? Whose waters is it actually? Where is the borders? I'll stop the story here. We'll continue this later on. So those are issues that we have been witnessing all over the world with regards to borders. So in our media also, this is what we have. Somalia, Sulu Sea, South China Sea, of course, Malacca Strait. It's all about borders, all about dispute and everything. About this also. The competition between the two big nations now. So the importance of ocean, now we're talking about that. Why do you think ocean is important? Resources, like what resources? Fish, obviously. Thank you very much, very good. Anything else? Oil. Very good. Others? Yes. Ship carries good. Shipping, right? Very good. 40 to 80% of the world trade is actually seaborne. Anything else? Why do you go to ocean or beach? Tourism? Tourism, right? Very important. Shipping. We call it sea lines of communication. You use ocean to transport goods and people. This is what happened around Indonesia and Southeast Asia. Oil and gas, not only for the resources, but also for the transportation. We don't really transport oil and gas using airplane at the moment. Not yet. Crude oil and petroleum products transported through ocean. Developing countries contribute this. This is very interesting now. If something happens around the world, like accident or whatever, this is the loss that it can cause. Can you see around here? The South China Sea, all of those. It is probably most prone area, but it can cause the largest percentage of loss. So basically, it is our interest to keep our ocean safe for economy, right? Now, I'll take you to ASEAN, to a closer environment. What do you understand about ASEAN Economic Community? Anybody want to say anything about that? It doesn't have to be long, it is not an examination. What is it? Freer movement of goods and people, probably. Anything else? Yes? Single economy? Very good. For Asian nation, correct. What is the consequence for you actually when, let's say, you graduate from your university in ASEAN? Competition, okay. Right, competition at the same time, opportunity also. Me, my generation, when I graduated from Gajah Mada, I would have only like 10 options in Jakarta to apply, 10 jobs. Now you have 10 times 10, right? So ASEAN Economic Community is all about, in my opinion, opportunities. But of course it is also about challenges, because you need to compete with others. And other people would be able to also apply jobs here in Indonesia if you're from Indonesia, right? This is how because I'm a geodetic engineering person, I usually visualize things. This is how I explain what ASEAN Economic Community is. So one day, somebody from the Philippines, working in Singapore, and calling somebody in Sleman to offer a project in Cambodia or Myanmar, right? And if you want to do that project, you have to assemble a team consisting of 2 people from Thailand and 3 people from Malaysia. And this is how it will look like. The interaction is just like that. So it is not the future, it already happens now. So this is what we say about ASEAN Economic Community. So it's borderless already in terms of economy, right? But yet, people ask me, because now it is ASEAN Economic Community, ASEAN is now one, do we still need borders? Any opinion? You're very sure about that? Yes, we still do need borders. Or how about we just, turn down the borders and so we don't have borders? What do you think? No? All right, let's talk about that later on. Any comment about this? I will not comment anything about this because the picture, I hope, is worth 1,000 words, or even 2,000 in this case. This is what China and ASEAN are doing. ASEAN, I think somehow they try hard to be united as one unit, even though it's not always easy to do that. Ocean is important. I think we all agree about that. Now the question is that where is our limit? Up to where we can exploit and explore ocean, and up to where we are responsible to protect our ocean. Where is the limit? This is what we are going to talk about now. Okay? Let me take you to Indonesia, the capital of ASEAN, or the nation of ocean. Okay? When Indonesia got independent, this is what Indonesia looked like for the territory, and the ocean that belonged to Indonesia was only 3 nautical miles from each island. It looked like this. Got it? So only 3 nautical miles from each island. So this is the land territory, this is the land territory, and the ocean is only 3 nautical miles from each island. So if we zoom over here, for example, zoom it like that, you'll be able to see that this blue part is actually Indonesian territorial waters, but not the green part. So the green part is actually international waters. It does not belong to Indonesia. So can you imagine how dangerous, how disadvantaged Indonesia was at that time, right? If you want to go from one island to other island, you will have to cross international waters. Okay, so our prime minister at the time, Juanda, did not see this as a positive, aspects. And then Juanda asked somebody, which is called Mokhtar Kusumaatmaja, to do something. We have to really save our country. We have to really unite our country into one. So the waters in between those islands actually belong to Indonesia. If you're an Indonesian, you would understand what we call Juanda Declaration, right? So this is what Juanda then instructed Mokhtar Kusumaatmaja to do. And Mokhtar Kusumaatmaja then translated into this kind of process. Basically to enclose the entire archipelago into one by a belt called baseline. So all the waters, the blue waters over there belong to Indonesia. And then the territorial sea was measured not from each island, but from those belts. Look like this. Got it? This is what we call then Indonesia called Deklarasi Juanda or Juanda Declaration. So this is actually for the first time in history, in the world actually, that the country would propose this kind of configuration. Now my question is, do you think that the world agrees about this? Like straight away? Of course not. Because before, those blue waters actually belong to everybody in the world. Now Indonesia would like to have it. But Indonesia then had to go to the negotiating table in the United Nations and then to convince the world that this is actually what Indonesia should have, or not only Indonesia but also other countries, the shape of which is similar to Indonesia, like the Philippines, for example, a lot of islands, and some other countries. And then after a very, very long negotiation, remember 1957, and then in 1982, which is very long, the world agreed to Indonesia's proposal. And then those proposals or those principles were then included into a convention called United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. Any lawyers here? Anybody from the Faculty of Law here? No? So I can say anything basically, right? So the Law of the Sea Convention that we have now, or UNCLOS, probably some of you would have heard about this. It's actually an international legal product where Indonesia contributed significantly towards the establishment of it. So this is what Indonesia wanted, remember? After the establishment of the UNCLOS, of the convention, this is what Indonesia got. This is what we wanted. Sorry, this is what we wanted. This is what we got. The power of diplomacy. Not every day that you will find this kind of situation. You are given more than what you requested, right? Usually you got less than what you requested. Now, allow me to refresh or probably give you a brief insight about Law of the Sea Convention. I think in your high school, if you're an Indonesian, you would have learned about how a country is entitled to 12 nautical miles of territorial sea and 200 nautical miles of exclusive economic zone, remember? Or even, I think everybody would understand that. So this is how it looks like. This is the baseline from where you start to measure the maritime zone. Out of that is 12 nautical miles of territorial sea. So if you talk about territorial sea, it doesn't really include only the water, but also the airspace above it. All right? Beyond that is contiguous zone, 200 nautical miles of exclusive economic zone, and also beyond that you can still have the seabed, which is beyond 200 nautical miles, which is called continental shelf. So in short, I would like to say that based on the Law of the Sea Convention, a country is entitled to a very large maritime area, right? Either only the waters, or including the seabed, or including the airspace. It depends on what zone that we are talking about. And so waters beyond 200 is called high seas or international waters that belong to everybody. Okay, beyond 200. So your entitlement is only up to 200 when you talk about waters. So when you talk about fish, it's only up to 200 nautical miles. Beyond that is for everybody, anybody. This is sovereignty, this is sovereign rights. So kedaulatan in Indonesian and hak berdaulat. So sovereignty covers only the land plus the 12 nautical miles of territorial sea. Beyond that is called sovereign rights. This is quite a particular term. Now, because I'm a technical person, I would like to tell you how to do it, how to measure the 212 nautical miles or 24 nautical miles. Imagine this is the coastline, this is the sea and land, this is how we do it. Right? So if the radius is actually 12 nautical miles, meaning that this is actually the outer limits of territorial sea, right? Some other people would think that the definition of the maritime zone is like this, which is incorrect. So you do not copy the coast and then pull it like 12 nautical miles. You don't do that, because you see the difference. So it is a lot better to use the previous one, which is what it is now in the law. Okay? So for the smooth coast like this is what we can do as a nation. Or if the coast is like this, curly, irregular, we can define what they call straight baseline. And then the 12 nautical miles is measured from those straight baseline, like that. You got it? I hope this animation explains by itself, right? This is what we call straight baseline. So this is how it was measured. Now, how about Indonesia? Remember, a country like Indonesia, it is entitled to enclose the entire archipelago like this. So all the waters in between belongs to those countries, like Indonesia, the Philippines, and so on and so forth. And beyond that is 12 nautical miles, 24 nautical miles, 200 nautical miles, and beyond. So can you imagine, theoretically speaking, based on the law of the sea convention, this is what a country like Indonesia or the Philippines could claim. Very large maritime area, in between those islands and beyond those islands. Okay? Now, if I have to give you a hypothetical situation, if there's a country very small, like this, alone in the ocean, no neighbors, so this small country would be able to claim a very large maritime area like that, right? Based on the law of the sea convention. So if there is a country like 1 square kilometers, for example, so those countries will be able to claim up to 1 million square kilometers. So 1 million times of its own size. So that is why a country really tried hard to defend or to really protect a small island, outer islands, not only because of the island, but because of the potential ocean that it can claim. So we're talking about also the resources that it can have out of this island. The question is it possible for any country to do this? Is there any country alone in the ocean? Because the world looks like this, right? With a very irregular shape. You know, the shape of the world is very irregular. And we know whom to blame for this. Okay, this is a joke, just in case you don't get it. No. So, okay, this is now the theory. Let's say we have this kind of situation in the world, and each country would be able to claim or is entitled to 12 nautical miles of territorial sea, right? Now, with this situation, what happens to state C and D? Is there any overlapping claim there? No, until they claim 200 nautical miles of exclusive economic zone, right? And then they will have this overlapping area in this area, correct? Where the limitation or borders is needed. So this is now what we call the maritime boundaries. So maritime boundaries actually exist or needed when there is overlapping of maritime zone between 2 or 3 countries. Okay? What happened to state A and B? They already have the land borders. What about the maritime boundaries? The maritime boundaries is actually the continuation of land borders to divide the waters. Okay? To make it fast, so we talk about the law of the sea convention. We see the possibility for countries to divide their ocean, or not possibility, but also the obligation. And then there's articles in the convention they have to use as a reference, and so on and so forth. Now we also have the continental shelf beyond that. So it means there needs to divide it, right? Okay, I'll stop it here now. All of this, it looks very complicated, but everything was actually based on the law of the sea convention, right? So the point is that even if everybody or every country in the world is in compliance to the law of the sea convention, the situation is already very complex, right? What happens if there's one country or two that does not really comply to the law of the sea convention? For example, the state F, we just, randomly say, this is mine. Right? It doesn't really have to 200 or 1200 or whatever. This is just mine. There's a country doing that. I wouldn't say which country. Okay, now if we apply this to Indonesia, it will look like this. Like that. Okay, can you see this red line over here? This red line is actually a line, borderline that is agreed already by two countries. So in this case, it's between Indonesia and Australia. Indonesia and like Thailand, Malaysia, all of those. What happens to, how about this green line? Is it the borderline? It's called limit. Because Indonesia settled the limit without agreement, without doing any agreement with other countries, right? Because there's no other neighbors over there, correct? So if you don't have neighbors, you can claim it, 200 without dealing with any other countries. Now what about this red line over here? Why do we need the borders over here? Anyone? What about it? What is it? So there is a small island called Christmas Island that belongs to Australia. Very interesting, right? The small island is actually very close to Java and very far away from Australia, yet it belongs to Australia. There's one lesson that you should learn from this. Only because you are close to something, it doesn't mean that you have the something. No, I don't mean to say. Yeah, right? So when you talk about ownership, you don't talk about distance here. Distance does not matter. I think my statement is very optimistic, right? That is actually really enlightening, okay? Distance does not matter, okay? Well, it is true for Australia at least. Even though Australia and Christmas Island are very, very far, but they still love each other. I mean, they still belong to each other, right? What about those dust line like this one? Do you have any opinion about that? Those actually line that Indonesia wants. Indonesia proposed, but not yet agreed by Palau in this case. Hey, how many neighbors that Indonesia has? Do you know? How many neighboring countries that we have? Or Indonesia have, sorry, you don't keep saying we. Can you tell me like one or two? Mention the name of the country. Or if you don't remember, you just read it there. Australia, stop. Malaysia, are you from Malaysia? No, you're from? Okay, I know that actually. Timor-Leste, Thailand, Brunei. Any comment? Is Brunei our neighbors? Maybe yes, maybe no, I don't know. Yes or no? No. Because if you check, the Brunei is over here, right? Right? So it is actually attached to, not to Indonesia, but to Malaysia. Papua New Guinea, thank you, very good. Singapore, correct. Do you want to add anything? No? The Philippines, yes, good. Sorry, this side? Have you heard a country called Palau? Maybe yes, maybe no. When I saw the name of the country for the first time, anybody from Palau here? Again, I can't say anything about it. When I heard about the country named Palau, I thought it's like a typo. It's supposed to be Pulau, probably, right? Wait, Pulau means island. But it's not actually. Palau is the name of a country. So we have 10 neighbors from India, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, the Philippines, Palau, Papua New Guinea, Australia, and Timor-Leste. 10 countries to deal with. Okay? Okay, that's Palau. That's our proposal over there. Over there. Do you think Palau would agree with that? If we ask Palau, if this class is in Palau, and the lecturer is somebody from Palau, of course he would display you Palau national map, right? That looks different from that. Like the line is probably going down or anything, right? Because it is basically proposal. Now, we talk about borders now, issues in ASEAN. Okay, Indonesia is actually in the center of ASEAN because we have 10 neighbors, right? Almost with all ASEAN countries that we have the borders with. This is the problem that we still have, or pending, not problem, but pending borders that we need to settle with our neighbors. Many of them. Okay, let me tell you this one. Why do we have borders with India? Can you imagine where India is? India is far away there, up there, right? Why do we have borders with India? Because India has small islands called Nicobar Island, which is this. So once again, small islands closer to Indonesia, but belong to India. Remember the principle? So this is what the Indonesia and Thailand, so this is our baseline, if you remember that. And this is the line between Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and also India over there. Right? And because over here we don't have any neighbors, meaning that we can have 200 nautical miles without dealing with any countries, which will look like this. Okay? This is with India. This is if you remember, beyond 200 nautical miles, we can still have the seabed. This is what we have over there, a little chunk, 4,000 kilometers. There is a problem there, right? What is the problem? Can you see two lines over there? The blue line is actually for the seabed. Remember seabed? Dasar laut. And I'll just say it, red line, not pink, because it's a bit sensitive when you talk about colors. The red line is actually for the water column, for the water. So the line dividing the seabed and the water are different. That's what Indonesia proposed. You'll be able to see the potential issues in the future. Now, that's between Indonesia and India. Now with Malaysia. Where is it? What is the name of this space over here? Yes, Strait of Malacca, obviously, because I put it there. Indonesia and Malaysia already settled borders actually in 1969, which looked like that. Right? This is for the seabed, only for the seabed, not for the water. So they didn't really divide the waters because at that time, the water belongs to everybody. Okay, when the border was settled. Now, after the Law of the Sea Convention in 1982, they are entitled to 200 nautical miles of, EEZ, right? So it means that now these two countries really need to divide the water column, the waters between them. If I ask you now, what do you think about this line, the red line? Is it closer to Indonesia or to Malaysia? Who is in the better position here? Malaysia, agree? So that's why when Indonesia and Malaysia would like to settle the water column boundaries, this is Indonesia's proposal. Why do you laugh? This is what Indonesia wants, to be a line dividing the water column. Why? Because Indonesia thinks that this is the equitable solution for them, right? And this is what Malaysia wants. Sorry. This is what Malaysia wants. Because they already have the borders to divide the seabed boundaries, right? Malaysia just wants, why don't we use the same line to divide the water column? So basically, these two countries now propose different line for the borders for their waters, which means those area now becomes overlapping claim. Indonesia wants it, Malaysia wants it. Okay, and in order for Indonesia to strengthen the claim over there, of course, Indonesia would send a patrolling officer over there to go there. Can you see the line over there? Sorry, the yellow shaded area? It's actually an overlapping claim. So if I have to show you the 3D in 3D, it also comes in 3D, like this. So this is the borderline divided in 1969, divided only the seabed, right? And for the water column, this is what Indonesia wants. Okay? This is what Malaysia wants. So this area now, overlapping area, right? So what happens if, and we haven't agreed upon that until now. What happens if Malaysian fishermen goes there? Will be captured by Indonesian patrolling officers, or vice versa. What happened if you are entering a water? Because of course those patrolling officers do not understand much, or they are not really thought about this complicated law of the sea, right? Articles. They just given this is our line and you have to defend it until you die, something like that, you know? You are entering a water. What will Malaysian patrolling officers say, do you think? Just cut and paste those phrases, right? So this is actually what happens in Strait of Malacca. So if I ask you now, is there any border crossing over there? Is there any border crossing over there? Of course not. There hasn't even been any borders yet. How can you cross something that doesn't exist, right? Okay, so what happens is actually each country has its own proposal, and those proposals happen to be different, and creating an area which is overlap. Now, this is between Indonesia and Malaysia. This is between Indonesia and Australia. Okay, let me tell you a little bit of history here. Before 60s, or 60s, 70s, there are three countries over there. Portugal, Indonesia, and Australia. And this is the border at the time. Why there's a gap over there? Because Portugal did not participate in the delimitation of borders. You know what I mean? Three countries, and Indonesia, Australia agreed to do so, but Portugal apparently was very busy at the time, so please you guys, you do it, the two of you. I could not participate at the moment because we had something to do. So that's why the line is like that. Certainly there's a gap over here because, the gap over here, right? Because this country did not participate in the delimitation of the boundaries, which is then we call Timor Gap. So that is the Timor Gap is actually the inexistence of borderline. Now, these islands, and remember these islands, this belongs to actually Australia, right? However, Indonesian fishermen actually went there already since 1700 to fish. That is why Indonesian fishermen now given the special rights to still fish over there, even though it belongs to Australia. So then there's an agreement between two countries called MOU box, which means in the box, even though theoretically speaking, it is actually Australia's territory, but Indonesian fishermen were allowed to fish there because of the historic kind of aspects. Meaning that Indonesian fishermen already went there to fish even before the existence of Australia and Indonesia. So this is called traditional fishing rights. Now, Timor-Leste, or Timor, integrated with Indonesia in the 70s. Now it means there are only two countries over here, Indonesia and Australia, right? So what they wanted to do is actually to close the gap, but then imagine if they close the gap like that, all the waters and seabed over here will be for Australia, right? So it is not equitable, it's not positive for Indonesia. That's why Indonesia and Australia managed to, they don't agree one single line, but instead they created these boxes, different area, so they jointly explore and exploit those areas and then split the revenue. Now, we are talking about the seabed here. After the dawn of the Law of the Sea Convention, they have to divide the waters. Now, this is the water boundaries. So, if I may explain once again here. So, this is actually the seabed. This is for the water column. So, in those shaded area, the water belongs to Indonesia, but the seabed belongs to Australia. It's so complicated. Yes, it is complicated. Now, Timor-Leste got independent again in 2002. It's gone. They have another agreement between Timor-Leste and Australia. Early last year, they also have another agreement like that. I know it's very complicated, so don't even think about it. I will not really ask you any question about this later on. Nothing in the exam. So basically now it's a lot more complicated around this area. So if you ask me whose ocean is it, I would ask you another question. Do you mean the water or the seabed? It can be for Australia, it can be for Indonesia, it can be for Timor-Leste now. Let me tell you in once again 3D perspective, like this. Indonesia, Australia managed to divide this seabed in 70s, and then in 1997, this is for the water column. Once again, for Indonesia, Malaysia, it was a proposal only. This one is not a proposal anymore. This is actually agreed already. So these two countries agreed already two different lines. Line dividing the seabed and line dividing the water column, which is different from each other. Okay? So what does it mean actually? It means that there is a space over there, as I said earlier, that the seabed is for Australia, but the water column above it is for Indonesia. Okay? What does it mean? It means this. Right? So if the fish has passport, it will be Indonesian passport. The green passport, not the blue passport. Because they are not government officials. So it means that our fishermen can go there and fish, right? But the oil and gas is for Australia because the seabed belongs to Australia. Now you can imagine how complex it can be. But what you might not understand is this one. The sea cucumber is for Australia. Yeah, because they live in the seabed. So can you imagine if you're a fisherman, a fisher woman, if you go there and fish, and accidentally you catch those sea cucumber, you actually violate the international law without even you understand it. And because those fishermen over there have not been attending any international week, I'm sure that they would not understand this much. So I know that this is complicated, but this is not illegal. You know what I mean? This is legal Yet, this is complicated. Well, Indonesia, Australia, it can be like, this lecture can be like for 5 days, and still I cannot stop, but I'll just give you a brief explanation about in the Sulawesi Sea, you'll have this, all of those different claims between Indonesia and Malaysia, and we still haven't really concluded anything until now. We discussed already for like 30 times the negotiation. We started in 2005 up to now. No significant progress as yet, but still, we do not give up. We still negotiate. South China Sea. Has anyone learned about South China Sea or interested in doing their thesis in the South China Sea, on the South China Sea? Okay. Again, very short. South China Sea looks like this. Very peaceful place, right? Of course peaceful, there's nothing there. Like ocean and land. But usually we have a land surrounded by ocean, right? Now we have ocean surrounded by land. You know what I mean? Usually land surrounded by waters. Now we have waters over here. This is water surrounded by land over here. Correct? So if you imagine only from this map, China, based on the law of the sea convention, is entitled to ocean over here, right? Vietnam is entitled to ocean over here. The Philippines can also claim ocean over here. Brunei, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore. So everybody can claim those oceans based on the law of the sea convention. So only from this you can imagine already, oh, this can be very complicated. If I make this story short, so even when every country claims maritime space in accordance with the law of the sea convention, the situation is already highly complex, which looks like this. Okay, I repeat. Peaceful, and then look like this. So can you imagine if one or two countries now claim not based on the law of the sea convention, it will create more complexity, right? There's a country doing that. I will not mention. Now, South China Sea, it looks like this. Indonesia and Malaysia already settled. Indonesia and Vietnam already settled for the seabed. So it means that now over here, the seabed in here exactly belong to Indonesia, right? The seabed, remember seabed only, I'm talking about seabed. How about water? 200 from Vietnam, 200 from Malaysia, Brunei, Philippines, right? Because it is what the law says. From Indonesia. Sorry. So those are all based on the law of the sea convention, right? Already very complicated, already overlapping areas over there. And there's a country called China, make this claim. Like, okay, everything inside this line actually belongs to us, to China. Excuse me? Yeah, based on, our ancestors' activities. Anybody from China here? Before I offend anybody? No, I don't mean, I'm a scientific person, so I don't really, but it's better if I can say anything about it. No. So, now, remember this is what China claimed, right? So if I have to visualize all of this claim like this, got it? Now we can put this into context. Remember the first few slides that I showed you, the fishing vessel? They went there, which is actually within its claim, right? Not 1, 2, not 2, 3, not 3, 4. So that is why Ibu Susi's people went there to capture. Why? Because they were actually fishing within Indonesian entitlement of exclusive economic zone. Can you see that, right? But now probably you have a different understanding why this big vessel came. Right? Because according to them at least, they were actually fishing within their own waters. At least the waters that they claim as the traditional fishing ground or whatever they call it. Based on the activities of the ancestors 50 years ago. Sorry, 500 years ago or longer. So whose waters is it actually? Any comments? My question is that Indonesia claimed the water based on the law. China claimed the water based on historic consideration. Which one is stronger? I would not say anything about this at the moment. So this is the official claim of China. Call it 9 dust line because the line is actually dust, not a continuous line. And by the way, if I ask you the question, if the claim looks like this, who is offended? Only Indonesia? No, who else? Malaysia, Vietnam, the Philippines, and then who did something? Did Indonesia do anything about this, legally speaking? Of course, Indonesia captured those fishing vessels. Did anyone do anything legally to protest or to bring this case to the arbitration or whatever? The answer was yes, is yes. Who did it? The Philippines. Any Filipino here? Oh my God, no? I was about to praise you or to, say, congratulate you or anything. Brought the case to the arbitration. This is can you imagine, a small country like the Philippines brought the case against China to the international court, which is actually very unprecedented, 2013, brought the case to the court. China refused to participate. China, can we bring the case to the court? Yeah, you can, but I wouldn't come. That's what China said. But one thing that is you need to understand is that just because China did not participate, it doesn't mean that China was excluded from the legal process. The legal process still went on. Especially because this is arbitration, it means that the president will need to select arbitrators, all the judges. And because China was not there to participate, the selection of the arbitrators were not done with the participation of China. It means that the arbitrators were selected only by the Philippines and the court, which makes it worse, right? Can you imagine you go to the court and you don't really have anything to do with the selection of the judge, and your opponent actually the one choose the judge. It makes it even worse. And what makes it even worse than that is that the president of the court was actually a Japanese. Do you know the relationship between Japan and China? Anyway, this is not, of course, this is not something that I can judge. It can contribute, but that is what happened. And then the process went on. The decision was made on the 12th of July 2016. And, well, of course, China rejected the decision. Right? This is what happened. One of the most important decisions of that arbitration is that China is not. There's no legal basis for China to have that. Which is actually the most important decision that makes everybody in the regions very happy. Okay? So it's no longer, the decision is there. Right? The tribunal concluded that there was no legal basis for China to claim historic rights to resources within the sea areas falling within the 9 dust line. No. So this is a big win for the Philippines. But because the Philippines, the decision that arbitration is actually for the 9-dash line, it actually also affects other countries positively, including Indonesia. So, how Indonesia views it? It was what Indonesia views before, right? With China's claim. So, now China's claim is no longer there, right? And Indonesia made one step further to rename this. Before, all of those ocean over here called South China Sea, Indonesia made one step further and then rename those part of Indonesia's EEZ into North Natuna Sea. I think you remember this probably last year. It's a little bit. So Indonesia made the new map in 2017, renamed the area, the space into North Natuna Sea, and a few minutes later, response from our friend in China to deny that, And it was very interesting because I was somehow have been learning all of this issue for the last couple of years. I got interviewed by a lot different media that only one day from this media. I didn't even know anything about it. So this is how a decision made by one country can really change the world or move the world somehow positively, negatively. Well, my friends, I can tell this story very, very long. I can talk about this for 5 days without stopping, but I'll just be wise here. I'll just stop here. We can talk about many things more, but let me just end here and have a discussion. Terima kasih, thank you. Any question? Wow, this is one of the most interesting class that I've ever had. Yes, please.
Oh yeah, my name is Triwidyastiyujani. I am from Accounting Department of Universitas Gadjah Mada. So, in your presentation, you have mentioned that it is almost impossible for ASEAN countries to unite as one big nation. And can you please explain or mention what are the reasons behind that? Thank you.
Your name is Tri, right? Tri?
Dias. Yeah.
Dias, okay, Dias. Dias, thank you, Dias. Let me put it into a different perspective, from a different perspective. I did not really say it is impossible to unite, but in my opinion is that you can unite, but it doesn't mean that you do not need borders. I have a principle. There's a poem back in the 1914 by Robert Frost. The title is Mending Wall. One of the lines goes like this. Good friends make good neighbors. So if you want to be in a very good term with your neighbors, you really have to define your fence first, your wall. Because only if you have the wall, you can define clearly your obligation and your right. And then you can be good friends. I mean, it depends on how you see it, but I agree with this kind of principles. If your relationship is very, very good all the time, you probably think that you don't need borders. But please be realistic. You cannot be friend always in a good term with your neighbors, right? So when there is something happen, bad, when the wall will save you. The wall of fence in this case. However, with your neighbors, in my opinion, you should not have a wall only. You should also have doors. So let us make it moderate now. You still need the borders, but you still need to treat the borders not like wall, but like doors. So those have to really distinguish and differentiate within yours, your own and your friends, but yet the borders or the wall or whatever you call it should promote interaction. Instead of excluding you from your neighbors, it should promote interaction between you two. So back to your questions. In my opinion, it is possible for us to unite actually in different aspects, like economy, for example. But it doesn't mean that you will demolish the borders. You still need to have the borders very clear, and then you can unite. Point. Next, please. Yes, please.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Owen So the previous lectures a few days ago by Dr. Imawan mentioned about the importance of transitioning or transforming informal markets into formal markets in Indonesia. And so, as we know, Indonesian country is doctrine to be agriculture, so our focus on maritime security and law and regulation are still weak. It's mentioned by Minister Susi. And then my question is, do you think that is contradictive if Indonesian want to increase or aims for larger sea border, while actually it will increase the potential growth of informal market itself? So my point is, in one side we are increasing, we want to reduce informal markets, but on the other side we're increasing the potential of informal markets.
How do we increase the potential of informal market in this case?
I mean, if we have larger sea borders, then it will be, our maritime security needs to be strengthened. Well, it's still weak, and it will increase the potential of illegal smuggling, of illegal fishing, or etc. The informal markets.
Thank you. That is a very good question. Let me put this into other perspective again. Let me make myself clear. We are not actually increasing our ocean. At least since the establishment of the Law of the Sea Convention. What we are doing now is actually to clarify where the borders are. I hope you know what I mean. We no longer increase our ocean, but we now try to define where the borders are. Ibu Susi would like to protect our resources, right, from others. So do not steal in our waters. The more important question is that, where is your waters? How do you define this is your water? Because you haven't even settled the borders yet with your neighbors, for example. So you can't really tell that your neighbors or somebody else came to your ocean or your water space to steal something, because you don't even have the borders yet, right? You know, just like what I said about the neighbors, between you and neighbors. How can you judge that your neighbors is stealing something from you or actually cross the borders if you don't have any borders yet? So I understand what you mean. In this case, what I would like to put into my own area of studies, I mean, I don't want to comment on other things that I don't really understand well. So Indonesia is not increasing the borders, but Indonesia would like to define the borders of our own waters based on the Law of the Sea Convention by doing the either unilateral delimitation or delineation or bilateral delimitation. Let me now go into your second point about the possible people smuggling, the protection of borders is still weak and everything. It is a different story. So this is actually not something new, right? If you see the map of Indonesia, we have 10 neighbors. Our first problem is that we haven't settled the borders yet. That's first problem. Second problem, we don't really have enough resources, including human resources, to protect that, including the technology. In Indonesia, we call it alutsista and all of those. So what we are doing now is actually not increasing once again, but we are actually defining the borders. And with that, of course, the obligation will follow to protect that. Because in the ocean, as you would understand, there is no wall. There's no physical wall. So even though there's a line on the map, but there's no wall actually. So anybody can go anywhere. So if you don't really protect that, if you don't really patrol that, they will basically come and fish because there's no wall. So with regards to the informal or market, whatever you say it, in my opinion, without even doing this, it happens already, and it's even worse. So now without any protection, without any definition of borders, who can guarantee that there is no fish transaction on the offshore there? Because this is what exactly happens. So small fishermen from Indonesia, they fish, right? And then they just go into the ocean, far away from the land, and they do all the transaction, giving the fish to a bigger fish from other countries. They sell actually the fish to other big vessel from other countries, and then they come back to Indonesia without any fish. So if they come back and then without any fish, meaning that there is no record about our production, remember? You got my point? So actually, in fact, we produce a lot of fish, but no record. Because when all of those fishermen come back to our shore, there's no record, and the record is zero. And there's other countries that go to their countries to record actually Indonesian fish. Right? So this is what we will talk about market. For example, there is a Thai big vessel. They don't really fish, but they just gather all the fish from Indonesian fishermen in the ocean. And then they go to Thailand and record those fish as Thai fish. Of course, because they're Thai fish, right? And I'm a Thai vessel. So can you imagine a country like Thailand, for example, can be recorded in the world as a bigger producer of fish compared to Indonesia? It happens. So not that they actually steal our fish, but our fishermen are very happy to sell the fish to them in the ocean. That also happens. Right? So this is the phenomenon that you probably should understand with regards to market. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Madi, for the insightful presentation. My
Pleasure.
name is Ulaya Gempurtirani, and
Ulaya.
from your previous presentation, if different countries use different methods in calculating, the borders and
Okay.
everything, then how big is the influence of United Nations or international in drawing the line, or like solving the
Very good.
problems? Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
So first thing first, Law of the Sea Convention, which is UNCLOS, actually not the single reference, but the main reference. But the next question is that whether or not, for example, you, country A, and me, country B. The first question is whether both of us already ratified Law of the Sea Convention. Okay? If you both ratify, meaning that will be our reference. That first. Second, if we delimit our EEZ, or exclusive economic zone, for example, we have to check the relevant article in the convention, right? Which is in this case Article 74. Unfortunately, in the Article 74, it doesn't say specific method how to delimit the borders. It only says this: country A and country B should delimit their exclusive economic zone to achieve equitable solution. So equitable solution is the phrase over there, meaning that it is up to you and me now what to do with that. So the first thing to do is to negotiate, bilateral negotiation, and then if it fails, we can go to mediation. We ask somebody to be our mediator. If it fails again, you can go to arbitration. Remember what the Philippines did to China, arbitration. If all fails, we can go to the international court. At least two options: International Court of Justice or International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. So there is the procedure. Okay, now let me tell you in reality. Because in the negotiation, of course, everybody wants to negotiate first, right? We don't want to bring the case into third party as yet, because we are good neighbors. Because it will make not a very positive sign if you bring this case into the third party. It indicates that our relationship is not very good. So in the negotiation, of course, you can say anything. And I will say anything too. So it means that the key of this is negotiation, actually. So not that actually I can do anything, but at least I can propose anything to you. If you're passionate enough, we'll do it in 60 years. Let me tell you the story. Between Indonesia and Vietnam, they started the negotiation in 1978, when I was born, and they concluded the line in 2003, when I got married. It's a very long time. It's like 25 years of process. So that's why we can be very optimistic about that, but when it talks about time, you have to be very patient. Have you got the point? Yeah? Next.
I'm Emmanuel Cristanto from the management department. So related to the first question, sharing is of course caring. Just like you said, we have to treat our walls just like doors.
Yes.
But then again, if we're trying to establish a country, we need four aspects, right? We need citizen, we need government, we need land, and of course we need sovereignty from the other country. And so my question is, how can a country be called as a country when our sovereignty is shaped by other countries because they keep on coming to our country?
Okay, that's a good point. I will not pretend that I'm a political scientist here, but in my opinion, intervention by a country does not always is not always indicated by whether or not other countries come into your country. I hope you are with me in this case. So just because, for example, you have a lot of people from other countries come and visit your country and contribute to your country, it doesn't always mean that you are dictated by this country. Because now I happen to be the head of the international office in this university. What we promote is actually interaction. We want more people to come to our university, and we want more of our students to go to other universities in the world. Because those kind of interventions is actually very positive. So I'm not in a position to say that intervention or interaction with other countries is always an indication of dictation of sovereignty. So, but yes, if there is a certain principle like your territory, your basic principles, you should not compromise when it comes to that kind of thing. So, but interaction, once again, it has to be promoted. Next.
My name is Justina from Economics Department and FEB. So from you mentioned earlier about the case of Indonesia and Australia, where they already have a agreement on like the seabed and then the water, yeah. So basically, if there's an accident on like an offshore mining, so that means like the land or the seabed belongs to Australia, right?
Yes.
And because if there's an accident, of course, like the oil will like explode, like go out to the sea and everything. And so basically, because of the Indonesia, they have their rights on the water. So with this agreement, it was actually kind of like make Indonesia like in a bad position because they get like their water polluted. Yes. Actually, I would just want to like clarify of my understanding on that the presentation that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So if it's like like that, the situation or like how?
Christina, right?
Justina.
Yeah. Justina, thank you very much. It is correct. So one thing that probably I would like to mention, because the seabed belongs to Australia and the water column belongs to Indonesia, and Australia could drill the oil over there, they can actually build a rig over there, which is actually in Indonesia's EEZ, right? In Indonesian waters. It is allowable by the law. First. Second, if something happens to that, like pollution or oil spill, of course it is the responsibility, in theory, responsibility of Australia. But in this case, if you agree with me, that actually the one who do all the drilling and everything is not the government, usually the private companies, right? But actually the contract is from the government. So it means that the government of Australia will really ask this company to hold responsible for that. Yep. Now, probably a different story. If you have the rig over there, because you drill the oil and gas over there, and if you're working in this rig, and then one fine morning, you want to fish. Can you do that? It must be very depressing. I want to fish, but I cannot because it's against the international law. Anyway, next question, please.
Good morning. My name is Najadia Kautsar from Economic Department, Trisakti University. So my question is, you've tell us about Ibu Susi explode all the ship. Like, we know that the border is there, but how about the fishermen who they don't even get the education about that? How can they know about the border, even in Indonesia, or the fishermen from other from other country, because they don't even know, they just go and fish there. Thank you.
This is a very good question. Najila?
Najadia.
Najadia.
Yeah.
Thank you. From Trisakti, right? Very good question. there's no wall in the ocean. There's no sign of borders and everything. So everything is actually abstract, imaginary. Not abstract, your thesis abstract. Please don't be so sensitive. I know that you haven't really finished that. It's very imaginary. So we should be assisted by technology. The problem is that the fisherman doesn't have technology, right? GPS is one of the solution. Let me tell you a different story first. Now I'm doing all the research to create a simple device. We call it GPS-based alarm for these fishermen. So if they are about to cross the border, the alarm will just beep. This is actually a very simple technology, yet it's very useful for them. Okay, this is what we can do. How about if there is nothing that they have? How do you think the fishermen navigate themselves? I heard something very interesting. Stars, guided by stars, sound very poetic. Yeah? Yes, guided by stars. In Indonesia, we call it rasi bintang, right? So GPS is actually just like those astronomy. When I was a kid, I was taken by my uncle to do the fishing in the ocean. And then in the middle of the ocean, there was nothing, and my uncle said, "Yep, we arrived already." I said, "What?" "Yeah, we arrived already." How do you know that we arrived already? Because there's nothing there. There's no pillars. There's no traffic sign or whatever. And the next answer makes me a bit more confused. "Yeah, because yesterday we also here." Like, what? How do you know that yesterday you were here also? And then he told me this. "Yesterday we came here at about the same time, and at the right side we see the same constellation of stars, and on the left side we also see the same constellation of stars." So meaning that you are in the same position. You know what I mean? Yeah. If you look at right, you see the same star as yesterday, and also to the left. It means you are in the same position. That is exactly how you define your position based on other objects' position. That is what GPS is all about. So I really hope that our fishermen is that advanced. But I think they are, because otherwise they could not navigate. They will go to just other countries to go home, right? "Oh, sorry, apparently this is America." Or like Columbus, no. But this is the two things. Technology is there, and their local wisdom is there too. That's why they're captured or seized by the patrolling officer, because they do not have that precise technology for that. Yeah, next.
Okay, thank you, sir. My name is Rafi from Economics Department at UGM. My question is, one of the big issue about international border issue is about the Arctic region too, besides South China Sea. Many countries like Canada, Norway, Russia, they try to claim the region in Arctic by using the continental shelf method. So my question is, how does it work actually to use the continental method? And then secondly is, why now? Why today? Like, why they didn't claim it like years ago? Why just claim it today? Thank you.
Very good. Your name is, sorry?
Rafi.
Rafi, thank you, Rafi. First, the Law of the Sea Convention, if you remember my first slide, like slicing slide, a country can actually claim seabed beyond 200, right? But if you pay attention, I don't mention until how long. You get my point? Because 12, 24, 200, but when it comes to the seabed, I didn't mention the distance. Because the Law of the Sea Convention does not mention the distance. It is based on geological structure, geomorphology, the sediment thickness, and all of those things. So meaning that if you can prove that sediment thickness and everything is actually in compliance with that particular articles in the Law of the Sea Convention, you can prove that this actually belongs to you. Yes. You know what I mean? My point? And why now? Because the Law of the Sea Convention says that you can do this until 10 years after the ratification of the Law of the Sea Convention by your country. For example, Canada or America or Russia, ratified this law of the sea convention, let's say in 2000. Okay? Meaning that they still have 10 years after 2000 to make the claim. So they didn't really do it in 2000 or 2002. They'll do it in 2010 at the limit. So if other countries ratified this law of the sea convention in 2010, they will have the time until 2020. Why do they delay that? Because the survey to identify all of those sediment and everything is very expensive. Right? I hope you understand this point. Next.
Hello, I'm Esteve Tomás. I'm from Andorra.
From where?
Andorra.
Andorra. Oh, okay.
And my question was about contamination, because nowadays it's like a really big issue about all the plastic bags that are on the sea. How will countries afford these problems? Because, for example, I read about things that they said that there's countries that contaminate other countries. So, for example, if there's plastic from Thailand going to Vietnam, how they will like just deal with this conflict? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So yes, we have a very big problem. We call it in the term, we call it marine debris or marine garbage. We use the word debris. That's why when you talk about managing the ocean, it has to be transnational activities. You cannot really protect your ocean just by yourself, because the ocean does not have even borders, right? Fish, for example, they don't care what their passports are. So meaning that when it comes to ocean, this is really a wake-up call for everybody actually in the room or in the world. This is the time we cannot really deal with this issue by ourselves. It doesn't matter how advanced your country is. If your neighbors are bad enough to throw all the plastic bag to the rivers and then end up in the ocean, you will still have the problem. So there is no very good effort from all over the world to actually join. We are going to have a conference in Bali called Our Ocean Conference. One of the topic is marine debris, where people from different countries will, declare their commitment to do that. So in short, we cannot do it by ourselves. We have to collaborate. That's why international organizations like ASEAN in this case, like United Nations in this case, will have to play a very, very important role.
Thank you.
Terima kasih. Thank you.
My name is Navia Basuki from Economics Department of UGM. So what we have been discussing mostly is about the borders and then how it affects like the seabeds, waters, and also the resources. But I was actually wondering how are these borders in the Borderless ASEAN is actually impacting like the mobilization of like shipping trade, like reefer ship or other cargo ship. How is this actually affecting them? Is that having a bad impact or not at all? Thank you.
In theory, with or without borders in the ocean, ASEAN is one already in terms of mobility, if you know what I mean. You can go to Singapore anytime, basically, as just like you go to Solo. Well, of course, the difference is the ticket, right? Yeah. You can go to Myanmar easily anytime without even applying any visa. So that is actually an indication that we are one. So it means that we don't really need to think about borders, right? But if we have issues with borders, it will eventually affect the relationship. Remember what we have with Malaysia? Sorry, what Indonesia has with Malaysia when it comes to borders? Ambalat, have you heard about this? All of those issues and everything? So Ambalat is actually about ocean space in the Sulawesi Sea. But then when there's something happen there between Indonesia and Malaysia, you know what we talk about in the media and everything? Every other things we talk about then came up, right? The takeaway, the flag that is upside down, many other things. So borders can really affect indirectly the relationship because that will be, bring an itchy kind of situation between the two countries if you don't really settle the borders well. And that eventually will affect the relationship in trade, in politics, and etc. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Juli from the Economics Faculty, FEB. So from your lecture, you say that we need to define our borders clearly. However, sometimes, like you said before, it affects the diplomacy relationship between the countries. So what do you think we should do, or any other countries, or moreover Indonesia, because we have this problem for so many times? Thank you.
Yeah. We have to settle the borders. We have problems with borders because we haven't settled the borders yet. You know what I mean? If the border is clear, it is very easy for us to tell, you crossed my borders, and it's wrong. Now in the state of Malacca, for example, because I have my own version of borders, and you have your own version of borders. That's why we have problems, right? So settle the borders. That's the first step. As I said earlier, you can do negotiation, mediation, arbitration, or litigation. You go to the International Court of Justice. But once again, it is not easy. Of course it is not easy. If it is easy, you will not have this lecture, right? Because everything was settled like 50 years ago or something like that. So, first thing, settling borders has to be on the top of the priority. That's first. Second, our government and you also, we have to try to do something to educate people about this border issue. Because sometimes, when anything happens, it'll be very easy to find a newly emerged expert, if you know what I mean, who didn't even learn about law of the sea or whatever, and then comment about, and the comment can be very provocative. Indonesia should fight. Why should we be afraid of small country like, whatever country that we mentioned? Things like that. That is what we keep hearing, right? From the politician, from expert or pretending expert, whoever. But once again, this kind of statement is very easy to sell. In the election year like this, those kind of provocative comment is very easy to sell. You don't want to hear a candidate or president to say, well, actually it is not very clear about their territory, our territory, there's a gray area. You don't want to listen to a candidate president to say that. You want to hear the candidate to say, this is our territory, we have to defend until I die or something like that. Because of this political intervention, positive, negative, the process can be slower. But once again, if you ask me, that is the step that we should do. Settle the borders first. Next.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Hairunisa and I'm from Gajah Mada University. I wanted to ask, in negotiating or confirming a nation's maritime boundaries, I have read that public uproar might affect policymakers in their effort to resolve it.
Public opinion, you mean, right?
Yeah, public uproar. And how does this event of public uproar actually affect their decision, and what are the examples of aspects that the policy makers need to consider beside the potential resources that we can claim? Thank you.
It sounds like a question for a thesis defense, yeah? Like very difficult. Public what is the term?
Public uproar.
Okay, uproar, yeah. Yes, I think I would like to relate this question to the question before. How political situation in a country can really make things different. If you're an elected official, you will pay attention so much about constituent. Correct? Am I correct? So you really think so much about the opinion of the people, especially if the election is only a few days to go. So the public uproar, actually, yes, 10 minutes that I have, actually affect. However, in my opinion, if you're a government official, you really have to be wise in managing this. You really have to pay attention to what the people say, but don't forget that we have the law, actually, right? The law of the Sea Convention that we also already ratified that. So in my opinion, public uproar is something that you need to pay attention to, but the one that you have to hold first is the law, the international law. because you are the one ratifying the law already. Because there's a country like, once again, China, just give you as an example. If China does not want to be in compliance with the law of the sea, in the case of South China Sea, you know what happens. And everybody is not happy. So you don't want to be another country doing the same, right? When you see it from the perspective of other country. But once again, nationally speaking, you really have to be able to manage this public opinion, public uproar that affect your decision. But on the other hand, you also have to be in compliance with the law of the sea convention in the case of delimitation. In the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they have the public diplomacy section. One of their assignments is actually to educate the people about what they are doing actually. So this is actually very important. What you do is something, but what you tell your people is something else. I mean, your ability to do something is one thing, but your ability to educate people about what you do is a different thing. That's why diplomacy is very important and communication is very important too. Next.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Azelia Almashafira from Management Department, FEB-UGM. I am very interested when you said that about the offshore transaction of fish, and there's no record when they come back to the land. I think that it is a very huge loophole in the maritime laws that can be a golden ticket for the transnational organized criminals to undergo their crimes. What do you think can be done by any parties involved to overcome this issue? Thank you.
First, transnational collaboration has to be there. Because you know the term called TCP, Transnational Crime Prevention. There's a mechanism for that. So that's why our Maritime Security Agency and other countries' Maritime Security Agency have to collaborate. For your information, we have in the Asia Pacific mechanism where Maritime Security Agencies come together and work together. The event is called Maritime Security Desktop Exercise, MSDE, which is funded in this case by Australia, for example, and invited 21 countries around the region to collaborate, exactly doing that. So if there is a case like this, what would happen? And who will be responsible for that and how they are going to collaborate? That is the first thing, okay? The second thing is that, probably the more important question, why our fishermen actually sell the fish to other countries or to the big vessel, right? That is more basic question. Probably because they have more benefit by doing that. If they come back to our shore, the procedure is probably more complicated, the price is probably lower, and so on and so forth. So it means that you don't want the fishermen to sell the product to overseas or to illegally to overseas. It means you have to tidy up your own systems. Like what happens to the fish recording on the shore, good price, no monopoly, no bad practice in trading of fish and everything like that. So it means that if you talk about international relation, you also have to be talking about our internal kind of management. So there are two things there. Be in a very good participation with other organizations internationally and tidy up your own system nationally. That is what exactly Ibu Susi is now doing in Indonesia. Yeah.
Okay, my name is Intan Karino from the Economics Department of UGM. So before we've been discussing about more geographical aspects like the ocean and areas, and how about more about the humanitarian issues like the refugees and migrants? How are countries supposed to make it clear? Because we're talking about people and we cannot forget that aspect when we talk about borders and countries. Thank you.
One issue that we face at the moment is the relationship between Indonesia and Australia when it comes to people smuggling. Because anybody going to Australia have to go through Indonesia, right? I think you probably follow this issue. If there are people from Middle East, for example, who will be smuggled to Australia, they have to certainly go through Indonesia. And what happens is that the boat that they use to travel from Indonesian shore to, for example, Christmas Island or other Asmar Island, was actually produced by our friends in the southern coast of Indonesia. Right? So that is one thing. And what happens is that from the Australian perspective, for example, at least when I was there, when I studied my PhD there, the perspective is that, okay, Indonesian people sell this boat to the smuggler because they have issues with economy, right? So meaning that if we buy the boat, this is Australian government. If we buy the boat by ourselves, they will have the money, the same amount of money. So they are not selling the boat to the smuggler, right? And then this is what the Australian government, especially under the Tony Abbott, did. And somehow it was very offensive. You know what I mean? You don't really do anything in your shore, but you then intervene at the country's shore to solve the problem in you. That is not very positive. So it causes a very big problem between Indonesia and Australia at the time. So I agree with you that people smuggling is really an issue. That's why I want to come back to my first answers probably to the earlier questions. Settling borders is one thing, but protecting it and administering is another thing. So in settling borders, there are 4 steps actually. Allocation. So it is a political power to allocate, this is yours, this is mine, this is allocation. From the allocation, you have to translate it into the map, to draw the line on the map. That's called delimitation. Okay, allocation, delimitation. But borders or line on the map has nothing to do with the field. And then you need to translate this line on the map into the field to give the pillars and everything. But in the ocean case, it is different again. So it is called demarcation. And after the demarcation, it's called administration. So we are talking about a very long process here. Allocation, delimitation, demarcation, and administration. So you talk about the administration. The last part, which is the most important part of border making. That is the end of my lecture. I know if you have any question, you can mention me in Twitter or Now you can search my name, by the way. So this is, by the way, I declare this is one of the best class that I've ever taught. So give a round of applause to yourself. Terima kasih, selamat pagi. Thank you.